what came first, the chicken or the egg? In terms of, I have an eating disorder. I'm going to jump into bodybuilding because that kind of like rewards that. Or you've been in the sport for a very long time. You've competed several times. Have you ever struggled with your body image following a contest diet because you're so lean, you look incredible, you have your photos on Instagram, people are seeing and commenting? Is it hard to go into your off season, or are you just always shredded so it doesn't bother you? Let me know a little bit more about how comfortable you are in your own skin, body dysmorphia, and how big of a problem is that in the sport?
Yeah, that's a great topic because I think that many competitors do struggle with going from being super shredded and stage ready to going to an off season. And I struggled with it so much so that my first 24 months in the sport as a competitor, I think I competed like 13 times.
Jeez.
I've competed, and it was just because I was like, I'm lean, I might as well do it again. I'm lean, I might as well do it again. And then so much so that I was getting ready for another, I think it would have been my 14th competition. And then I was training and just felt so weak. Ended up having, I think you made a video on it. I went to the hospital. I had rhabdo, kidney stone, UTI. I was just like, kind of like, my body was like, we're done. And that was the last time that I decided to do these like serial shows and really took an off season to kind of recover. And yeah, so post show, I think the best thing to do is to make sure you get all your photo shoots done before, if that's something that matters to you, because a lot of people have this idea that they're just going to stay lean, after their show just so that they look good and do all this stuff. But then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure and you're setting yourself up for an unrealistic expectations. It's not healthy to stay that lean.
Yes.
Do all your stuff before your show. After your show, have goals set. And I always will, no matter what, if I'm competing, I'll have like a short-term, mid-term, and long-term goal for what I want with my physique and then like what I want with my life so that I don't feel that emptiness of prep, of constantly having to do something where I'm like, okay, I know that I'm doing this. I know I'm going to do that. I'm not like, oh, but where's my cardio and all these 6 meals and all that kind of stuff.
Personally, I've been heavily criticized as being somebody who's toxic for telling people to stay lean in the off season. Now, I've probably said, I'm going to say 1,000 times now that for men, somewhere around 15% body fat, and for women in the 20s, that's healthy and that's where you should be. But for some reason, people think that I preach like you got to be shredded all the time. You should look like you're competing. Perhaps it's because I'm very lean in my off season, but I don't think that's normal. I do a lot of cardio. But what percent body fat do you think is healthy? And do you think it's better to stay like somewhat lean in the off season or to like bulk up? Because there's the whole thing about bulking and cutting. Like, how much should you gain, like pounds or percentage body fat in the off season versus contest shape? And do you feel like I promote being too lean? Like, what is your take on what I preach?
So I have my own train of thought without knowing that was yours, but mine is similar. I never gained more than 10, 15 pounds above my stage weight. I never have. The most I've ever gained was 15 and it was uncomfortable for me. But with that being said, my preps are 7 weeks, 6 weeks. They're not painful. I don't have to go into this really stressful state to try and get lean. You asked me what a healthy body fat percentage. So I never know my body fat percentage, but I will say, I think it's a little bit different for everyone. For me, when I tell my clients and females is that a healthy body fat for them is when you have your period. If you're having your period, you know that your body is telling you that you have enough nutrients, you have enough body fat to do what it's supposed to do. If you don't have a period, you're too lean. It's that simple. Obviously, getting your blood work done and all that kind of stuff is great. If you want to get a DEXA scan, that's something that can be helpful. But for me, I know that I can't tell if I'm even gaining muscle. Not that I have, but if I were to have gained 20, 30, 40 pounds, it's a lot harder to tell if you're even making progress or if you're just putting on a whole bunch of fat. So,
I love it. That's a very concise answer. It's very specific. You're getting your period, then that means you're probably eating enough. Now, for me, for men, I'll say, do you have enough energy in the gym? Do you feel good? Are you able to sleep? Can you concentrate? Are you suffering from insomnia? Is your libido in control? Because that percentage, maybe you're 10%, you feel great. Somebody else is 15 and they feel horrible. They're lethargic. So that's variant for everyone. But one thing that I
Yeah.
see all the time, everyone says, is that, Greg, you need to bulk up to put on muscle. Like I'm looking at how lean you are right now, and even at your heaviest, you're up maybe 15 pounds. That's
No,
like,
I just competed. I'm lean.
yeah, but at your heaviest, you might
Yeah.
be 10% above your stage weight. So let's take a guy who's 200 pounds, shredded 5%. 220 off season, that's probably where he needs to be. You don't need to get fat in order to put on muscle. And so what I
No.
see is the average person, they don't have any abs. Like if you see a girl with a belly and she's like, I'm going on a bulk. I was talking to a girl at the gym yesterday. She's like, yeah, my coach wants me to go on a bulk phase first. I'm like, why would you want to do that? You look good now. You're healthy. You're
Mhm.
putting on muscle. Why are we going to get fat for a while to then have to diet later? Men's coaches for men, same thing. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
already 20+% body fat. Why are we bulking, which we're then going to have to go on a 16-week diet and a hard diet to get cut?
And there's two things too. When you have a lot more body fat, people are like, yeah, I'm a lot stronger. You know, I can lift a lot more and put on muscle. But what they don't realize is that your exercise, your endurance is also going to be decreased. So you may think you can lift more, but you're not able to have the same type of intensity in your workouts that you would. Some people are like, no, I can lift 2-3 times the weight if I get fat. Yeah, but like it's not the same as if you are going to put in like a 2-hour workout. You won't be able to do that. And another thing is people don't realize when they put on a lot of body fat, adipose tissue releases estrogen. So you're kind of working against yourself in terms of muscularity if you have this unopposed estrogen from all this fat that you have on your body. So instead of like taking anti-estrogens and getting fat, why don't you just like not put on as much body fat?
Exactly. There's a law of diminished returns. If you're 5% or like as a woman, maybe 12%, whatever, we don't need to talk about the percents. But if you're super lean as a man or woman and you gain some fat, it's going to allow you to build more muscle. Like you can't be stage lean all the time.
Yeah.
But once you get past 10% more than your stage condition. So as a guy, say you're 5%, you go to 15. If you're a girl, say you're 12%, you go to 22. After that, it's just unwanted fat. It's actually working against you. Not to mention, the body is dysmorphia, like I keep saying, like you have to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you were proud of yourself at 12% and you had a six pack, you might have veins in your abs, and all of a sudden you're 30% and you're sloppy and you're like, yeah, but I'm doing it to put on muscle. Then you have to go on a 16-week cut with an hour and a half of cardio a day and a 1,200 calorie diet, all to get back to that body that you will have for one day. And then to keep repeating that year after year, that is hard on the head.
So hard. And that's why I think it's a lot healthier to have waxing and waning is really hard mentally, exactly what you're saying. If you're closer to homeostasis, like when you're in prep and when you're off season, you're here, you're not going to have those huge fluctuations. And it's not just going to be fluctuations in your weight. It's going to be fluctuations in your mood. It's going to be fluctuations in your hormone. It's going to be fluctuations in everything. So you're going to feel wildly different all the time. And that sometimes unveils people's mental illness that they didn't even know they had. And then throw in peds. You know, how are you going to expect someone to have an even keel, normal mentation when they're having wild, like everything in their body's always flipping and flopping? It's crazy.
Absolutely. And have you ever thought of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, in terms of the bodybuilding mentality?
Yeah.
Is bodybuilding attracting people who perhaps are susceptible to eating disorders or already have it and they're like, wow, I have an eating disorder. I'm going to jump into bodybuilding because that kind of like rewards that? Or people are 100% normal, healthy, and then they do a show, and then after the show develops, now they're having problems because there's, I believe, 25% of people that compete in sports involving weight classes who suffer from an eating disorder. That's a lot. That's 1 out of 4, and it's probably even higher in bodybuilding.
I think it's higher in bodybuilding. I'd go as far to say that at least like a lot of top Olympians, you will talk to them and you'll hear that they suffered from anorexia or bulimia, especially in the women's side of things, before they started to go into bodybuilding. And the good side of that is that structured eating can help people with eating disorders if it's not a caloric deficit. So if someone has an eating disorder and they start lifting weights and structuring their meals, that can help them. When it becomes dangerous is when a person with an eating disorder has structured small meals and they stay, even though they're bodybuilding, they're still anorexic if they're in a deficit. You know what I mean? Like they may look like they have more muscle, but they still have to be able to put on some weight in their off season. So like bodybuilding can be good, but competing is not for all bodybuilders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking in today's age with body positivity, and I'm like, it's gone on such a far end of the spectrum. Like people are
Yeah.
300 or 400 pounds, and like Lizzo, she's rubbing her belly, saying, I love all this extra weight. It's like so great to me. I'm like, we shouldn't be glorifying obesity. And I'm happy that you're proud of your body, but shouldn't you be proud of it enough to do something about it to be healthy? And
Yeah.
I don't see how bodybuilding is really healthy when you look at it.
With the same light, Lizzo rubbing her belly. That would be like if someone was emaciated and they were 82 pounds and 5'7", and they were like putting their hand around their leg or something, and the internet would go crazy. That's not healthy. This is dangerous. Everyone will lose it. Obesity is linked to so many different types of uh, dangerous implications. So, I mean, it doesn't matter, fat, skinny, whatever. If you're on any end of the spectrum, it should not be glorified. If you care about your health, for sure.
Now, people who are perhaps the obese or less healthy population are going to say, well, how can you speak the way you're doing? Bodybuilders are on performance enhancing drugs. They have tons of muscle that's not healthy. Like, and I actually made a video and I said, to me, being a bodybuilder at the top level would be the same thing as being obese because they're both not good for you. What do you think of that comparison? Like, I basically made it out of my head. I
Yeah.
said, being a bodybuilder or strong, like being like 300-pound muscled up guy or perhaps a wellness competitor, to me, just as unhealthy or it's dangerous as just being somebody who's obese. Do you believe that's true?
Yeah, that's undisputed fact for sure.
Hmm.
Mass is mass. If someone is 300 pounds, okay, and they're covered with muscle, it's still putting stress on their organs, just like it would if someone was 300 pounds in fat. There's obviously different hormones that are going to be released if someone has muscle versus fat. So that's something to look at. But in terms of stress on their organs, yeah, for sure.